All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Darren Fink. I am with Transfiguring Adoption. Transfiguring Adoption creates and develops media and resources to help nurture and grow your foster and adoptive family. We have been using the metaphor lately that just like the airlines tell you that you need to get your oxygen mask on yourself first so that you can help the other person with you, we also believe that caregivers need to be given the support and care they need so they can turn around and properly care for kiddos. So we help kiddos by giving a hoot about their caregivers. Tonight we were asked once again to do a live discussion panel with our with a support group in Southern Illinois, and we're opening it up to the world. So we're hoping everyone's able to join in with us here. And I'm going to be checking in a moment here to make sure that that support group is online with us because I don't see them quite yet. Let's see here. I lost my train of thought. Tonight's topic we're going to be doing is welcoming kiddos into your home. So when a foster parent is welcoming a new child into their home or an adoptive child is welcoming a new child into their home, how can you make them feel the most welcome and how can you help them to thrive the best? So that's what we're going to be talking tonight. While we are waiting for one more panelist to come on board and we are waiting for our Southern Illinois support group to come and join us, I wanted to just throw it out there that Transfiguring Adoption and our panelists are not claiming to be experts as far as professional to replace any of your counseling, legal advice, or any other things. We're just hoping to have a great discussion tonight and hopefully giving you some information so it'll help you in your journey with foster care and adoption. I also want to throw out there that I want to mention that we would love for you to follow us on Facebook just search Transfiguring Adoption, and also on YouTube. We'd love for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And the last housekeeping thing that I have is we will be doing another panel next month that's thriving during the summer is going to be the topic, and we have some experts lined up there, and it's going to be on June 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And go ahead. Can I start over, you guys? If we have right here. I'm going to go ahead and ask my first question again. First of all, we are talking about the topic of welcoming a child into your home. And so I just wanted you to go through, and we'll start with Elizabeth. Elizabeth, can you briefly tell us about yourself and how you fit into the discussion today?
Yes, I will. So thank you. My name is Elizabeth Sutherland, and I currently live in Tampa, Florida. I work for a Big Four accounting firm as a recruiting associate. In my free time, you will most likely find me blogging over at noordinaryliz.com or mentoring foster children. I also speak for those who don't have a voice. I volunteer in my community, take spontaneous road trips to new and adventurous places, and just being out on the water and simply enjoying what life has to offer. And so for today's discussion, I feel like we are like two peas in a pod. And when I say that, I know firsthand on how a child should be welcomed into your home. I was born in Spain, came to the U.S. when I was about 5 years old, and I entered foster care at the age of 13 and aged out the day I turned 18. And in between that time frame, I had been in and out of over 10 placements. And so the 10 placements could have been group homes, foster homes, respite homes. Some were for a day, some for years. But for me, I never knew the feeling of what home was. So I'm happy to be able to contribute my opinions and thoughts for today.
Thank you so much. And Nick, I'm going to put you up next. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the table today?
My name is Nick Segan, and I'm a foster parent in the great state of Michigan. We have been a foster family for about 10 years, on and off with some breaks, and we've had 30 children come through our doors, and and we have 5 right now. And so we have some interesting experience to share, things that we've learned, frustrations with the system, techniques that we found have been more successful than others. And we also created a great resource for foster families. It's called fostergarden.com, and it's a way to, it's an information service to help foster families get control of their time and of their resources and of their information to help hopefully save them time and money and stay organized and compliant with, licensing regulations and all kinds of things, so that you can easily access important documentation when you're in an IEP meeting, or securely get information to caseworker or what have you. So.
Fantastic. And last but not least, I have Rachel. And Rachel, do you want to tell us about yourself briefly and what you bring to the table today?
Sure. My name is Rachel Rothie, and I am currently a case manager at a private provider called Smoky Mountain Children's Home in Sevierville, Tennessee, where I work as a case manager as well as an adoption assistant, and I also work as a home study writer. So I've kind of become the jack of all trades in a sense. I have experience with working with kids in level 2 residential setting as well as in psychiatric setting, and such as a hospital. And I'm here just to answer any questions, especially that pertain to the home study process and things to watch out for, as well as the first couple of weeks and what it's like to have a worker come in your home and work with you guys on a home study. Because I know that's especially a very daunting thing for a lot of foster parents. It kind of sounds super scary, and it is pretty invasive, so it's completely understandable that it makes some people nervous, but if there's anything I can do to answer questions and make it less scary, I'm all for it.
Thank you so much. And I will, since we had all that trouble again, I will reiterate that I'm Darren Fink. I'm with Transfiguring Adoption, who is the nonprofit that is hosting this event. If you have questions, what we're going to do is I have a few questions that I'm going to ask our panel, and they're going to chime in and just start a discussion on this, and I will mediate it. But while they're talking, if you have questions that you want to ask our panel, please, there's a Q&A feature on this that I will turn on right now. Hopefully that's not why we had all the trouble earlier. But go ahead and send me your questions. I will see them. I will also be checking Twitter and Facebook for the hashtag #TAdopt. That's T as in Tom, ADOPT. And I'll be checking those for questions. Last time we had a really good conversation with everything. So without further ado, we have Elizabeth here, and so she's going to be kind of giving you the insight from a former foster youth that is aged out of the system. So she has great insight there. Nick has great insight being a seasoned foster parent and kind of seeing it all. And Rachel, from the professional side, she is a great resource. She's seen all different levels and is very much the spirit of non-judgmental and here to help people. So the first, I guess, next question I have is, we're talking about welcoming a kiddo into your home. So what makes a home welcoming for a new child, foster or adoptive? What do you do to get them into the home and make them feel welcome, you guys?
Who's going to answer first? I'm sorry.
Go for it. I'm throwing it out there. Anyone can answer.
Well, in my experience, it kind of goes to day one. And first placement day is really centered around food. That's like one of the big the big pieces of that day one placement, because they're in a strange place. They're in a strange place with strange people. We always say that we're aliens. We're just really nice aliens. But if you were taken away from your family or everyone you knew, and you were placed with aliens, you would probably not be happy, even if they were very nice aliens. And the food will be weird, like very, very weird. And they're not used to eating how your family eats. Often they're from, different cultural backgrounds and things like that. So we like to keep it really, really easy. Stick with, things that are comfort foods for them, that are really, really basic. So like make it ramen that night for dinner, even though there's like not nutrition and all those things. Like throw nutrition and all that stuff out the door for first night placement, because really this is not a battle you want to be having. You want to set everybody up for success. You're not going to get anywhere if someone's uncomfortable. So like Little Caesars it up. You know, it's $5 hot and readies, and they're more comfortable. It's something that they're familiar with, and you know, and honestly, the other kids are usually thrilled anyway. We may we haven't tell you a horrible failure we did one night. We were not as seasoned foster parents, and we really loved Chinese food, and we thought we're going to make this really nice special dinner for our new placements, and we ordered this big Chinese spread. Oh goodness, what a disaster. We set these poor kiddos up, and the placement, I think the first few days of placement after that were an extra struggle because we just didn't know any better, because it wasn't the food that their parents ordered, it wasn't the Chinese that they're used to. Everything was weird and gross to, you know, a whole new level. And wow, and food is so primal. It is so tied to our basic reward system, and you know, all those good feelings and comfort, and even sometimes negative feelings. So for me, you know, food is so key on that, especially on that first day and that first week. Really evaluate what you're going to be serving. Keep it really simple. If you can find out maybe cultural foods, or you can get foods from their community, or even just, like I said, super basic and easy, ramen and Chef Boyardee and Little Caesars and those kind of things that they're used to, that everyone knows, and it really helps make things go smoother.
Love it. Does anyone, Rachel and Elizabeth, do you have anything to say? How do you make a child feel welcomed, or what should people do to make a child feel welcome? And maybe you want to talk on the whole food thing that Nick brought up.
So, from my perspective, I always look at it as when I had entered into these different homes. And if I could give any advice, it would be to actually be welcoming. Like, open your arms to these kids. Because if a child is introduced, obviously, to a new place that is foreign to them, it will make them less likely to be receptive to you. And then when foster parents seem like they really want you to be a part of their home, this will put the child at ease and start to open up over time. And we want to remember these children are coming from different, diverse backgrounds, so they may need some time to adjust to their new surroundings. Give them enough space to do that. And also, as a foster parent, it would be ideal to just make sure you really communicate with your children, or the foster kids, and let them know that they aren't foster children, that they are just young people who are actually experiencing foster care. Because you know, we want to try to steer clear from the word, from labeling anybody. So you know, the experience that you want to give these foster kids, make it be so impactful that it'll leave a footprint on their lives and hopefully help shape their road to a successful future.
Awesome. And Rachel, did you have anything that you wanted to say to that question, or you want
Yes.
to leave it?
Yeah, especially when it comes to food, a resource you can definitely use is if you have a worker that's been on the case for a little while. Sometimes you don't have that luxury, especially if it's an emergency placement that comes in the middle of the night, because we all know, you know, unfortunately, trauma doesn't happen at our convenience. Sometimes it happens last minute, and, you know, you're just going to do everything you can with working with the worker to try to find a way to make things fit and be comfortable. But if you have a worker that has been with the case a while and might have a little bit of insight, feel free to ask. You know, a lot of people are kind of usually intimidated to ask things like that or think that we might not know that. But, I mean, I know just from going through drive-thrus with kids within the first week of what their favorite fast food is, and it doesn't seem like a big thing, but, like, I know at least with my caseload, if they're doing super awesome and I take them through to Taco Bell and it's their favorite, oh, man. Makes a big difference. Have a little bit of that reward system type thing, which I avoid using food personally as like a reward subject, but you know, a little thing like an ice cream cone goes a long way when you're working with kids of any age, even if they're 17. I've seen like kids do a dance over pulling up to Taco Bell, and they're like almost 18. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, definitely ask your worker, see if they have any insight on that. I mean, you can ask the kid directly as well. Another thing that sometimes will happen with placements is if you're working with a private provider agency, especially, you'll sometimes have the opportunity to have respites with placements and kids, and you kind of get an opportunity to see the things that they like on a smaller scale with like weekend visits and things like that. And I know with foster parents I work with, that's been very helpful with kind of slowly getting to know them and get the kids into a comfort zone area. And just like Elizabeth said too, is just, you know, being very welcoming, not going overboard and making them feel singled out, but almost like kind of keeping it close to like a typical day with maybe a little bit of a surprise with something nice to eat. But with all of my kids that I've had go on respites and go on placements, it's almost been the best thing to kind of continue it as if it's a normal day and kind of get them used to the routine, especially with the teenagers who've been bounced around and don't really know what a sense of routine is. It's really, really good for them. And the ones that are old enough to voice it have very frequently mentioned that to me, where they can just kind of feel like they've walked into a home. So,
well, let me ask you guys real quick, as I'm hearing you guys talk about this. Food has now been brought up, and that food is important, but I'm also hearing things about keeping it simple, keeping a routine. Is keeping things simple important to welcoming a child into a home? Is that something that parents need to watch for?
absolutely.
Yeah, I would say, especially on the first day and the first week, I mean, throwing a bunch of rules and regulations and expectations out there is totally not the way to go. I mean, they've just been uprooted and are dealing with tremendous amounts of change, and that's just not their brain's just not in a spot to process that right now, and it's not appropriate. You're just going to set yourself up for issues with maintaining the placement.
Yes.
So so if you're keeping it simple and you're not, when is it okay? What do you need to be doing those first few days then?
Well, I think from my perspective, it's just actually getting to know the children, and you don't set expectations to where they will fail, but make it where it gives them some sort of normalcy. And like for some when you're teenagers that come in your home that's 17, don't go to restaurants and expect the child to pay for a meal, because they may not have the funds, and that may make them stand or steer clear even further away. So
I agree on
make
that.
it comfortable. Yeah. And make sure that make sure they have a voice. So
Yeah.
Perspective.
Big, loud, and clear thing from a worker, because this is something that we do sadly come across. A kid's, allowance is not food money. Most of our kids that are in DCS custody do receive an allowance for every day that they're in custody, so it's roughly about 30 days a month, and that is one of the quickest things that will get you into a discharge CFTM, is using funds from their allowance and making them pay for their own meals. To be blunt, that is inhuman.
I completely agree with that. It's
absolutely inhuman.
Yeah, at least our stipend money is broken into two different pots, and the first one is to be used for the food and offsetting those costs. But yeah, the allowance money is for incidentals and for above and beyond basics, and for giving them a sense of normalcy in their life. Definitely not. That's really actually kind of heartbreaking to hear, and wonderful that you shared that, Elizabeth, because I don't think people realize how prevalent issues like that are and how damaging it can be. So I really applaud you for sharing that, because talking about those things and bringing them out in the open is really important for everyone to learn about how to really welcome and have a successful foster placements. And that's just, to me, it's just heartbreaking.
Well, and it happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. It does. No doubt about it.
Well, since we're talking about bringing up things, mistakes, you guys. What are mistakes that you've seen maybe other parents make? I mean, Liz, you might be able to say, like, what homes you've been in where they made what shouldn't people do that's not making the kids feel welcome, the big no-nos when they first come in the first few days.
Well, and again, from my perspective, right, it's, I've been in some homes where there's already been children there, but it's their biological children. So here I am walking into a home and to these other kids, and they already have that relationship. So I always ask, how do you make your child feel safe in your home? Well, however you do that, that's how you should make the foster children feel. Show them that you care. Have things on hand that they may want or need to make them feel like they were still at their own home or own past placement. And so for that would be like a special blanket or pillow or stuffed animal. Have something that will help them feel at ease. And so that's some of the things that I don't see, and I feel like that would help a lot.
Nick and Rachel, what do you guys think? What are some mistakes that you've heard or seen people make the first couple days?
Some of my teen placements, and when I've talked to them about it, have reported not having clear expectations and then having angry and frustrated foster parents about saying, well, you broke the rules, and they didn't have a clear understanding of what those expectations were. Not that you should lay them out first night when they rock in and like, here's a list of rules, but especially when they are older, more experienced teens. I mean, this is what my teens have told me, is that they do to a point like a list of expectations and rules, because a lot of times they do want to be compliant, and if they aren't supposed to go in this room or they aren't supposed to touch these personal belongings, they kind of want that out there so that they know, and then everyone's kind of clear on when curfew is and what my expectations are so they can follow those. And a lot of times what they were telling me is that when they went from home to home, there was a lot of frustration because those expectations weren't clearly communicated. And then foster parent was frustrated and telling caseworker child was a menace. And it all came down to not having clear understanding of what those expectations were.
Okay, very good. Wait, Rachel, did you have anything to say to that, or?
I think they got some of the bigger ones. I definitely agree about not having very realistic expectations, especially when for younger kids too, but older kids as well. A lot of people kind of have this magical idea of adoption and foster care where you're going to get a well-behaved, well-adjusted kid that's going to sit there and say yes ma'am and no ma'am. And that's the biggest thing I see sometimes is people kind of coming in a little bit like that, and then the first time there's a meltdown, they're calling and wanting this kid out because they're not being perfect. And even if this kid doesn't have multiple CPS reports or something, that kid is still traumatized. That kid has been yanked out of the situation and is not home. And just expecting them to be like a perfect little guest in your house is completely unrealistic, and that's setting up the whole placement for failure. So I would definitely agree with keeping it simple in the beginning, telling them the biggies up front so that they know, and going from there and kind of gradually, working on goals, working on expectations as you move forward, and not expecting them within the first week to be perfect, well-adjusted angels. That's just not possible. Especially, the way I see it, the older they are, the more that they have seen. You're not going to fix 16 years of trauma in 1 week. And it's unrealistic to expect that of them, and unrealistic to expect that of yourself also. So I would definitely say to just give yourself, as a foster parent, a lot of patience, and give the child a whole lot of patience and support, and just understanding that it is going to be rough. It is going to be a little bit rocky, especially in that first month. And that's okay, because it's rocky with your own biological kids sometimes. Sometimes it's nicer than others. And all kids in general go through phases of, different levels of tantrums. We all joke about the terrible 2s and 3s. So we have it with biological kids too. So it's okay for things to be messy and not be perfect. And that goes for the house too. I know there's a lot of people that are probably like me, where you like things to have their unique place in the house and it stays there, but it's okay for the house house lived in. The worker is not going to freak out if you have your laundry out on the couch. It's okay. And the kid's going to think that's okay too. It doesn't have to be like the Hampton Inn either at home. So just know that. It's okay. We're not going to judge you on that. We have laundry in our house too, so we know.
Well, I have 2 more questions that I'm going to ask the panelists, and I know we had technical problems at the beginning, but I'm still going to try to get us finished on time to respect our panelists and people's time that are watching at home. So if you want to get your questions in, again, there's a Q&A tab on here that you can use to ask your questions, and I will be watching those. Also, you can tweet or Facebook, and I will be watching the hashtag #TAdopt. So I'll be answering and fielding those questions after we get through with these next 2. For the panel, so I was recently, not too long ago, at another panel for a government agency, and people were talking about how to make kids feel safe, and I know one person said, well, just tell them they're safe and you're going to watch them and make sure that everything's okay. And I was looking at it like, well, that's not making them feel safe, though. Just telling them. Those first few days where you're trying to make the kiddo feel welcomed and get them acclimated to your home, how do you make a child feel safe in your home?
I know for us, safety, expecting someone to earn or expecting someone to keep you safe is a level of trust. And trust is something that's earned. And it's really not going to happen that first day or that first week. Because you can say reassuring things, but it's earned through action. And typically, over the months and years that you have those kiddos, when they see that you've made a decision to protect them, and you've protected them from maybe a bully or maybe an unsafe situation, or they see you intervening, or they see you always providing a constant supply of food and a constant, even the things like redirection and bedtimes and structure. And they start to tie those things like dental hygiene and things that maybe they weren't getting provided before, then you kind of build that level of trust, and then they kind of come to feel safe by you providing those things. But I really don't know that there's a lot you can do immediately to earn your trust. I think that's okay. I think that's a kind of a healthy thing. If they come to you and are distrusting of you, I think that is something to be expected, and we can verbally reassure them. But again, it's mostly through our actions, and it's going to take actions and time to earn that trust.
Right.
Did anyone else have anything to add to that? How do you make kiddos feel safe?
No, and I totally agree. And also, I think one of the things to always remember is when these children enter your home, this is not their fault. And so, as a foster parent's perspective too, you got to realize, don't look at it as this is their fault or anything while they're in foster care, because these kids can really sense a lot, and I think if you keep an open dialogue with them and just show them that they care and they mean something to you. And I mean, when you think of safe, like Darren, you were thinking, safety. It's a big word for these kids, and so trust is a big factor, for sure.
This is going to be my last question that I have, and then I'm going to open it up to our audience that's watching to give us some questions. My last question is, so some people want to give a child space when they're coming into their home, and then others want to give constant attention to a kiddo when they're coming into the home. And so you kind of have the two different sides, the person that just wants to say, go up to your room and deal with life, and then you have the other person that's constantly looking over the kid's shoulder that first day. What are the extremes that people should avoid when they first get their adoptive kiddo into the home or their foster kiddo? Or and is there a happy medium, and what's that look like?
I would say it depends a lot on the age and experience of the child. Teens typically go to sleep. When they come in, I mean, it's not uncommon to have just 2 and 3 days of really intense, restful sleep, and we try to respect that and give them that space, that clean, safe sleep space. And again, it goes back to you said earning trust and knowing that they feel safe. Having that quiet sleep space is very important because they're not going to be able to tackle all of the emotions and all the trauma that they're dealing with right now, and I think sleep is a big part of that. For the littler ones, it's a different story because they kind of usually express more wants for physical attention or attention during play, and they kind of get excited and feed off that attention. So I think with the other one, you want to kind of not give them too much and kind of redirect them back to play and again letting them sleep off there because they're younger, they just present their they present their distress differently and show it differently, but they still need that restful, quiet, safe space, especially in the first 2-3 days. Like it's not uncommon. They come and they sleep. And I mean, I hate to say it just anecdotally, but they sleep, 10, 12, 14 hours. It's not uncommon for, the first 2-3 days.
Wow. Yeah, see, I hadn't even thought about that, but sleep, even though you don't feel like you're doing anything, letting them sleep is doing something.
Well, you'd like to think that your home or this home environment is, you hope so. You hope that it's more quiet and more stable and more peaceful than maybe what they were experiencing, at least at the time just before removal. And so they usually, at least the kids report, it's like, when we were there, it was just, your house is just so quiet. Your house is just, well, it doesn't seem very quiet to me, but but they always report, and I always laugh because I was like, my house feels like chaos, but I guess, I don't really know what true chaos is. And so they often report that your home is just so quiet and thank you for just letting me rest, because that was really, really important. So I think that is very, very key, and especially right when they come with a new placement, it's just so much brain processing. That sleep, that restorative sleep, is just so key, and letting them do that, not going and saying, okay, well, you've been sleeping, 7 hours, get your butt up, and we got to get moving. I mean, usually they're not even enrolled in school yet, so just chill. I mean, you're going to have so much time to pass on your greatness and do all these things that you want to do as a foster parent. You just need to just chill and let them process, because it's just so much. And I'm going to lean more on Elizabeth on this, who obviously has way more relevant experience than I do.
Yeah, I want to hear, Liz, what would you do? What have people done for you in the past? What do you think of this question? When you go into a home, what's the happy medium, or do you want a lot of attention? Did you not want a lot of attention?
So for me, when I entered into foster care, it was, I wouldn't say I was a quiet kid, but I really didn't have, I wasn't like a troublemaker and that sort of thing, and I was in a home with multiple children, and for me, I felt like I didn't get enough attention, or didn't get hardly any attention, and so you always wonder, well, what's wrong with me, or somebody not checking on me. And I think it's important that if you have multiple kids coming into your home, that you try to give them enough or the same attention as you would the next kid beside you, or something, so and also, I mean, kids will let you know too if you are giving them too much attention or you are in their space. And I really, feel that you should just try to keep, again, the communication is key, and make sure that the way you communicate with these children, you have to watch your tone, because sometimes the way you talk, or sometimes your tone towards them may push them away. So just keep mindful of, just like speaking to like a regular child, your child, if you have biological children.
Well, I think that's huge too to keep the communication lines open because I know I've recently heard a story of someone that said that they gave their kiddos so much space when they first came to the home, they just basically sent them to the room and let them.
Oh.
We're talking 8, 9 years old, and they just sent them to their room and said, just we'll let you settle in. And
Oh my.
they
Well,
didn't
no.
help with their clothes. They didn't help. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not even sure at 38 if I know how to do all that. Like, don't send me to my room by myself.
Well, no, because it's a foreign place. And so if you send these kids to the room, to them it may feel like it's a form of punishment, and that you don't want to spend time with them and get to know them. So I think if a child's coming into your home right away, the first thing you should do is you grab their bags, you take it to their room, and just let them feel the place out.
Definitely at that age too, like 8 or 9. Oh my goodness, no, they're still very young. I mean, I'm thinking, 13, 14, 15 years old. Typically, they want more space, and I want to respect that. But with the little guys, and the medium kids, like you're talking about, they need that tenderness, like you were saying.
Well, and too, if they're placed with siblings, you got to keep in mind, you got to treat both of them the same, and they may want to spend time with each other, and give them that space to bond, because they're experiencing the same thing. So allow that time for them as well.
That's a really good comment about the siblings, because a lot of times when we take placements, you're often dealing with a sibling group or even a sibling group that's been separated. So yeah, very, very good point.
All right. Well, I do have some questions that are in, and I'm going to throw it back out there to everyone. We do have about 10 minutes that, unfortunately, since we had technical difficulties, we don't have as much time to deal with questions as I had hoped. But if we start getting a big pouring in of questions, I'll keep it going, and we'll excuse people early. But let me go ahead and, again, say that you can ask your questions live through Google Hangout here, or I will be watching Twitter and Facebook for #TAdopt. Our first question that I have for you guys is, we just got licensed and are waiting for our first placement. We have a dog that is friendly but pretty energetic. Should we do anything special with the dog so it won't freak the kids out, is basically what it's saying. So do they need to do anything special with pets, or what do you guys think?
Well, from, again, my perspective, I think sometimes pets may be the best thing for a foster child. It might be a coping mechanism for them. So if the pet's friendly, then I would say I wouldn't do anything.
It depends on the kiddo. I mean, we've had some kiddos that were absolutely terrified of our pets, and it took a few weeks for them to acclimate to having cats and dogs in the house, and we wanted to really respect that. So we would do things like, not allow, keep the dog downstairs or outside maybe more than we would have before. So give them time, and then give a introductory period, because they might have a completely culturally different experience with pets, and that's what we had seen. Just been trained to be afraid of dogs because maybe of the neighborhood they come from. So yeah,
Yeah, I agree with Nick. I would definitely say to kind of maybe keep the very energetic dog maybe in another room and, bring it up. I mean, and that's another thing too. You can also ask the worker when you get the call, because sometimes that might be something they know. But if not, I would say just to maybe, put the dog in the kitchen or something like that and introduce the dog over a gate. So that way, if there is a safety concern, that way you've kind of got that barrier at least, so they can feel safe while you're kind of gauging the reaction of the child. That might be a good way to do it.
Like Elizabeth says, often pets are very therapeutic for the kids I've had. But like, especially in that first introduction, they're coming in, they're getting dropped off by caseworker, and then there's this this terrifyingly energetic dog that wants to jump up and lick them, and it's already an incredibly tense situation. So definitely, dog in the crate or dog in the basement or dog outside, at least during the initial, and then maybe the first day or so.
Okay. Second question I have that came in here is, my husband and I don't want to get into a habit of a child sleeping in our room. What are your thoughts on kids sleeping on the floor of your room, especially the first night? So I guess if they're scared of the dark or they're young kids.
I'm going to put out right there that's likely a licensing violation, so they need to speak to the licensing worker right away to find that out, because the last thing you need is an investigation about licensing on your first placement. So often that's not permitted, and that can make it difficult.
Yep, it doesn't say if they're foster or adoptive, though, so I'm not sure.
Gotcha.
But point.
Yeah. So if it's a foster, they definitely need to check with their licensing worker. And other than that, that's kind of a more typical problem with lots of families, whether foster, adoptive, or otherwise, because for these other kids, they might be used to sleeping with parent too, and so it's like the first time they're sleeping alone in their bed, and that can be extra complicated. So.
Yes.
Liz, do you have anything to say to that?
And I concur with Nick, but also I don't think having a child sleep on the floor the first night in a home is very convenient, because some of the kids, again, they may look at it as a form of punishment. So you kind of have to be careful. If anything, to make them near you, I would put them maybe sleep on a couch. But again, to Nick's point, I do have to check with.
Typically, you're allowed to sleep on their floor, so what you would do is you would get a blanket and a pillow and curl up on the floor in their room with the door open.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah, we've been there. We've all been there, right, Darren?
Yes, we have.
That and keeping some comfort objects are definitely very good. Comfort objects are very key, especially if, like, the kid has a stuffed animal and, sometimes things don't always get sent over in the first transport to the house. So especially if they don't have their specific toy, it helps a little bit to have something that can kind of stand in place for a little while. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's still going to be very upsetting, of course, and understandably so.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think that, and maybe on the floor, I would definitely check with your agency just to make sure there's not a licensing issue, and I would definitely make sure it's the same sex parent. If you are male, do not be in a female's room.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
going to be the big thing, especially, and vice versa. And that's not anything against anybody. That's just to protect you, so that you can continue to be an awesome foster parent for other kids. Because unfortunately, where some of these kids are traumatized, and they've had things happen to them or heard of other people having things happen to them, sometimes they will make false allegations. And sadly, that's just part of the beast and the nature of being in this line of field. Right. And as much as we don't want that to happen and hope it doesn't, we still want to make sure, especially so that your worker can support you if an allegation does arise, that we're there to support you, and we have, things documented to show that you took steps to make sure that that couldn't be a concern. And that's not anything to make anybody scared or anything like that, but it is very common for at least one false allegation to pop up. Yeah. And all allegations have to be looked into. So just making sure that you're keeping that in mind in the back of your head. But, just different things like that. And if you have any questions, too, you can ask your agency, definitely.
And I want to piggyback on the comfort level as well. Sometimes children are used to noise or white noise before they can go to bed. So maybe leaving the TV on or radio. And also a night light would be very efficient for you to get and keep, because sometimes these children are really afraid of the dark. So anything you can do to help on that end.
We actually,
I would keep a kit.
Yeah, I was going to say, Liz, we actually, Transfiguring Adoption, we're piloting first foster placement kits, and in the kits we actually put a nightlight, because a lot of parents don't think about when they're going through all the agency paperwork and getting their home study and everything, they don't think about a nightlight. And even for a teenager, a nightlight can be very beneficial, depending on what kind of trauma they've been through.
Right.
I've had several teenagers that need night lights, and I mean, all for very understandable reasons, so I definitely agree with that. And I'm glad you thought of that, Elizabeth. I completely forgot about that, so thank you for bringing that up.
Well, when I was 13, when I went into placement at 13, obviously I can't sleep without some kind of noise, and so I still sleep with the night light, and I'm 35, so if that tells you anything. So definitely, I think the thing, and that's going to be really neat to see the toolkit. Darren.
Well, check it out on the website. That's my plug for that. We
Awesome.
let me get. We've got 2 minutes here, so I am going to pick one more question, and we are going to start wrapping up here. With our first foster placement, we didn't have the honeymoon period that everyone talks about. The first day the child, who's early elementary, started hitting my other kids, sometimes apparently for no reason. It was the first day. I didn't want to discipline the first day, but felt that it was needed to be addressed at the same time. So they want to know, what do you do disciplinary-wise? So we're talking about, I guess, making sure that a child is feeling welcomed into the home. And I guess that is going it might seem we're going against what we had originally said with keeping it simple, keeping them welcome, not expecting them to follow the rules. What do you do with that, though, when disciplinary measures are needed to take?
I think at that point, it's a safety issue. So safety issues kind of don't apply because, just because they're new in the home, we don't get to play with matches, we don't get to do those things. So, but it's just all about how you handle that discipline, right? You're not gonna come down super firm and ground them, and especially if you try to take things away, and there's nothing to take away. They that's another thing. You've got traumatized kiddos. You can't take their tablet away. They've never had such things usually. So you have to work up to that. But I think the first day it's going to be a redirection. So you're going to be, well, maybe we're going to, if in that particular instance, one parent might take that child into a different area, and maybe we can work on integrating the kids' play later. But right now, so you're not constantly providing discipline that first day, but you have to look at alternatives to discipline. So usually that means redirection. In my experience, and not allowing opportunities to have to provide discipline, at least until you're not day one. So at that instance, maybe doing a different activity. Maybe having free playtime with all the toys was probably really overwhelming. So maybe instead we're going to sit down and have a movie. We're going to change things up. We're going to do something that that doesn't give us the opportunity or the need to provide the same structure. So we'll do a complete. The term they would use would be redirection.
So then, what do you guys think about? I'll take it a step. What if it wasn't something that was a safety concern like hitting? What if it was? I can't even think of an example at the moment, but something that's not a house rule, but it's just kind of a normal. Okay, what if a teenager smarts off to you on the first day, and you feel like it kind of needs to be addressed?
Ignore it.
Ignore it.
Ignore it. First
Yep.
day, you ignore it.
Yep.
First day, they're pushing your buttons. They're trying to see what you can do. You just you smile and you move on like it didn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is not the time to deal with it. You have no idea, Elizabeth, how good that makes me feel to see you nodding your head. I'm getting confirmations right now, which is awesome. But ignore it. If it's a teen, ignore it.
Is there anything else that you guys can think of that, as far as that question goes, that need to be addressed with how to handle discipline issues?
I liked what Nick said with kind of taking them off to the side or somewhere away from everybody else and addressing it. That is definitely big, to not make a big scene in front of everybody else. They teach that in every single class in preparation with working with kids. I feel like with isolating, taking away the audience, however you want to word it, but basically you're getting to a place where the kid is coming out of that environment where they're a little bit escalated, aggravated, changing the environment a little bit with that, because that's something to also factor in is, kind of like Nick pointed out, if there's too much chaos going on and there's too much stimuli, they might need a little bit of a change of scenery to even be able to talk about it. So kind of seeing how they're feeling, make sure you're taking a gauge too on how you feel, because if you're revved up and angry, that's probably not the time to go and address it. Especially if it is something like hitting your other children who you've already gotten the chance to bond with. That's definitely a high tense situation sometimes for some parents and sometimes a snap thing. So definitely an opportunity to work with your spouse or other person in the home or adult and tag team a little bit with one person going with one kid and one person going to the other. And then, and if there is something in the environment that does need to be modified, that can be addressed. But I definitely like that, though, that you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. And I want to piggyback off of the two of you. So look at it from the foster parents' perspective too. If their foster parents are angry from whatever reason or upset, these kids can sense that and see you as a threat. So if you do feel like you need a moment, like walk away and try not to be that way around these kids, because they really can sense that, and it will really make them probably act up worse. So
I think it's good to verbalize, too, that you need a moment, because then it takes also the heat off of them needing a moment. Like, I do that as a worker. Like, if a kid is mouthing off at me and going off, even if I'm not necessarily completely escalating, I'll be like, you know what? I need about 10 minutes. I'm going to walk over here for a little bit and take a break. And when we come back, maybe we can talk about this a little bit better. And sometimes it works. You know, a lot of times it does, I feel like, but sometimes it doesn't. But it's a good opportunity to give that space so they can kind of clear the air for a minute and process themselves, and you too, because sometimes you need a break.
yes, and it's okay to say it. So.
Well, you guys, speaking of breaks, we are past time for this discussion panel, so I wanted to thank everyone so much for joining us. I know we have one support group in Southern Illinois, and I've been seeing the viewer numbers toggling up and down, so thank you for everyone that's been watching. Again, my name is Darren Fink with Transfiguring Adoption. Please join us on Facebook, do a search for Transfiguring Adoption, and like our page. Also, we have a YouTube channel we would love for you to join. Next month, we will be having another panel full of experts, and we're going to be talking about thriving during the summer. I know a lot of us parents having the kids home 24/7 are going to want to stop and listen in on that one. And in July, the discussion is going to be coping being investigated, which also is something that's getting more prevalent with foster and adoptive parents, that having allegations made against you, and all of a sudden you're being investigated. So we're going to be talking with a panel of experts about how to cope with that. But June 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time will be our next panel. Thank you so much. Before we go, Liz, can you tell everyone the web address for your blog?
Yes, it's noordinaryliz.com.
Please give that a visit and check out all of her neat insight that she has as a former foster youth that's aged out of the system. She has some great insight for parents, so you can understand your children and what they went through more. And Nick, can you give a shout out about Foster Garden in like 30 seconds?
Sure. Yeah, Foster Garden is an online web service to help foster parents stay organized and keep all of their documents and appointments and notes and mileage logs and reimbursement and everything all recorded and centralized, so that you hopefully can pull out that IEP and your next appointment all ready to go and impress everybody, and not have that nightmare drawer that we all have full of papers. Well, actually, it kind of goes to your next topic on your next panel too, about being investigated. It's a great way to help keep yourself protected. To have those great.
What's the web address for Foster Garden?
It's fostergarden.com. So foster like foster care, garden like your garden you plant your tomatoes in, all one word, .com.
And again, go visit that website. It's amazing because it keeps all of your documents and everything. You could even access things from your mobile phone when you're at a doctor's appointment. We all know we need that. Just an easier way to handle things. And again, visit us at transfiguringadoption.com. Thank you so much, Rachel, Liz, and Nick, for being with us. And I am going to sign out of here. Hope everyone can join us next month.
Thank you for